Hey, what's up, guys? Kalin here with another episode. And yeah, it's getting crazy out here. Don't expect gas prices to go down anytime soon, um, particularly if you live in the US. So, here I have a couple of articles, one from the New York Times and another from Reuters, that pretty much sum up the situation. This one says U.S. weighs Russian oil ban as gas prices surge and the Ukraine war grows. So if you've been to the pumps lately, you've been noticing that the prices are shooting up. I live in Atlanta, and we haven't seen gas prices this high in a very long time. I'm not even sure if we have seen gas prices this high. Article says global stocks dipped on Monday as U.S. officials discussed an oil cutoff. They're considering cutting off Russian supply of oil in order to further stifle the Russian economy. And gas prices hit a national average above $4, up more than 10% in a week. So that's intense. So it says President Biden came under pressure on Monday to ban Russian oil imports into the U.S., forcing the administration to consider action that could further punish Putin, but exacerbate high gas prices that are hurting consumers at home. Yeah, this is kind of crazy because, particularly with the pandemic and the economy having already been stifled, we're still recovering from that. So businesses are just really, over the last few months, getting underway. We got the mask mandates that are lifting all around the country, and we don't really need to see higher gas prices at the pump, especially when people are just recovering. The Biden administration, along with its global allies, has already imposed sweeping financial, trade, and technology sanctions on Russia, but Western countries have deliberately carved out its energy sector, with top U.S. officials saying it would be unwise to disrupt global supplies given how heavily Europe relies on Russian oil and gas. So this is pretty intense, right? Because so many countries are getting their oil directly from Russia. So even though there are all these economic sanctions being imposed on Russia, you still see a lot of European nations directly getting gas from Russia. Now, to be fair, the gas that Russia is delivering is for contracts that were already purchased from Russia. So Russia is just delivering on these contracts. I have a Reuters article here that says, has there been any interruption of gas supplies because of the war? So far not. Russia has been delivering gas to Europe to fulfill long-term contracts, according to buyers such as Uniper and RWE in Germany and traders in the Baltics. But since last year, Russia has only been delivering the contractual volumes, saying no buyer has asked for additional volumes and that it didn't have much spare gas itself. This has caused prices to spike because in the past, Russia was usually delivering extra supplies. Prices also rose because other major producers struggled to deliver more gas amid tight global markets and rising demand due to economic recovery from the pandemic. Now, here's something that's very interesting, right? You would think a country that you are invading, that all economic ties with that country would be cut off. And this just goes to show you how interconnected the world is. Reuters article also says, has Russian gas that flows through Ukraine to Europe been affected by the war? As you guys know, there's a huge pipeline that goes through Ukraine to get to broader Europe, and it carries gas from Russia. It says no. Volumes of Russian gas delivered at the Slovakian border after a roughly 800-mile journey through Ukraine have in fact increased since the war began, according to data from Slovak gas transport company Ustream. Gas prices on the spot market have risen sharply, making Russian gas, which is largely sold through long-term contracts, more attractive to European buyers. Ukraine has banned some cross-border gas trading activities, but has said it would not restrict the flow of Russian gas to Europe. Crazy. Inside Ukraine, however, some secondary distribution pipelines for domestic consumption have suffered damage due to shelling and airstrikes. That's to be expected, according to the country's gas pipeline operator, Gas TSO of Ukraine. In the statement, it said it was forced to halt supply to several regions, leaving hundreds of thousands of inhabitants without gas. So here we're just getting into some of the particularities of war, some of the natural consequences of a full-scale invasion of a sovereign nation by a much larger bordering nation. Let's go back to this New York Times article. At his State of the Union speech last week, Mr. Biden talked about the economy's strength, but noted that high gas prices along with rapid inflation are hurting consumers. Duh, we all feel this. Those dynamics pose a political problem for the president, whose approval rating has suffered amid voter concerns about his handling of the economy. Mr. Biden spoke with the leaders of Britain, France, and Germany by video on Monday, and the four affirmed their determination to continue raising the cost on Russia for its unprovoked and unjustified invasion of Ukraine. And like I said at the beginning of this video, don't expect gas prices to go down when we're intent on increasing sanctions and standing firm on the sanctions we've already imposed on Russia. Europe has deliberately exempted energy supplies from Russia from sanctions. At the moment, Europe's supply of energy for heat generation, mobility, power supply, and industry cannot be secured in any other way. Now imagine that. Imagine you're Europe, right? Most of these European countries are allied with NATO. To be imposing sanctions on a country that's not part of NATO, Russia, in hopes that they stop their invasion of Ukraine, also a country that's not part of NATO, but to also be dependent on Russia for natural resources is insane, right? Like, you have a wife or you have a husband and you're cursing them out, right? Because they're doing crazy things or whatever, but you're still dependent on their paycheck. So you have to find a way to cut yourself off from needing their paycheck before you can really talk shit. And in our current global paradigm, Europeans and Americans are both talking shit and are dependent on Russian imports for oil. Now, it should be noted that the U.S. is much less dependent on Russian imports. Biden administration officials say the immediate discussions over Russian energy are focused on banning domestic oil imports rather than carrying out wider sanctions that would cut off purchases by other countries. That could lessen the economic shock to oil markets, given the United States does not import much Russian crude, right? So Russian energy are focused on banning domestic oil imports. We're trying to use our own resources and at the same time look out for Europeans, because we don't want Europeans to falter in their ability to keep imposing sanctions on Russia. It says last fall, the United States, imported about 700,000 barrels per day from Russia, less than 10% of its total oil imports. So we're not importing that much. Less than 10% of our imports come from Russia. By contrast, Europe imported 4.5 million barrels per day from Russia. That's about 1/3 of its total imports. That's intense. Like 33% of European oil is coming from Russia. The United States can easily find a way to make up for any loss of Russian oil, while Europe would have a harder time doing so. But any disruption in the flow of oil could further rattle global markets, including oil prices, which have surged because uncertainty over Mr. Putin's invasion of Ukraine. Right? The price of oil has soared about 26% over the past week as the conflict has intensified. 26%. That's intense. Our fearless leader, Mr. Biden, in a speech more than 1 week before Mr. Putin's invasion of Ukraine, said that a conflict involving Russia could affect American consumers. I will not pretend this will be painless. Seems like, what was that movie? 300. Remember the dude who raped Leonidas' wife? He was like, this will not be painless. This will hurt, or something like that. He said like something crazy, like he was trying to blackmail Leonidas somehow. I can't remember what the specifics of it was, but yeah, check that movie out. 300, great movie. He said there could be an impact on our energy prices, so we are taking active steps to alleviate the pressure on our own energy markets and offset rising prices. Now, check this out, because here China comes into play. It's unclear how much pain an import ban would actually inflict on Russia. Moscow could try to make up for import bans by arranging to sell more oil to other customers, including China. Now, we know China and Russia are in bed. There's even reports from like intelligence services that say that China knew that Russia was going to invade before the Olympics. Xi Jinping told Putin, hold off on invading. Like the invasion date was February 24th, and the Olympics ended on February 20th. And there's reports like, underground channels saying that Xi Jinping was like, dude, don't invade yet. We're not done with the Olympics. This is crazy. Apparently in, 2014? When did Putin invade Crimea? Let's see. Yeah, February 20th, 2014, right? So isn't it ironic also that the invasion dates seem to happen around the same time? Like February 20th, 2014, February 24th, 2022. That is just too close. It's like they have this cycle of invasions, but if you know anything about military planning, nothing happens on like a short time scale. Putin's probably been planning this invasion for a very long time, and everything doesn't get presented to the public. So while we were just going about our lives and going through the whole COVID thing, Putin and his generals are silently plotting, as we just found out. February 20th, 2014, Russia annexes Crimea, right? So crazy thing is, China is Russia's most powerful strategic partner, and it has supported Moscow's grievances against the United States and NATO during the war in Ukraine. On Monday, the Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi said in a news conference in Beijing that no matter how perilous the international landscape, we will maintain our strategic focus and promote the development of a comprehensive China-Russia partnership in the new era, right? Yet China would have leverage to bargain down the purchase price, so Russia might still face a shortfall in revenue. If the United States eventually imposes sanctions that keep Russia from selling its oil, Washington would need to ensure there is a robust global supply of oil. Some analysts ask whether the Biden administration would lift energy sanctions on Iran if the United States, Iran, and other nations reached agreement on a new deal to restrict Tehran's nuclear program, but officials say there would be no lifting of the sanctions. So here we are basically seeing the restructuring of the global order. I believe there was February 26th, there was a UN Council meeting in which there was a vote to globally condemn Russia's actions in Ukraine. And 3 countries, I believe it was China, India, and the UAE, abstained from condemning Russia. So we could see a new restructuring of the global order. And we know that China is calling for a new multipolar order. So we could be witnessing, as Kim Iverson has noted in one of her recent videos, a grand restructuring of power order and perhaps the end of U.S. hegemony, which is huge because when we start talking about like Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies, and we start thinking about natural resources and how they're shared among countries and who's in control of setting prices, and even the distribution of corporate power across the globe, what corporations are popping up where in what countries, who's managing the say, we could be looking at the U.S. as slightly lower on the pole. Now, if we talk about nuclear power, we know that Russia has the most nuclear weapons in the world, I believe, and U.S. comes in second. I believe Russia has somewhere around 6,500, something like that, and Americans have like 5,400 or something like that. We have to acknowledge that Russia has, while they may not have the strongest economy, they definitely are militarily, at least in terms of nuclear weapons, superior. Now, we have multiple aircraft carriers positioned strategically around the globe. And so the U.S. is still much more highly fortified for strategic strikes across the globe. But even given that, these balances have to be maintained. We have to be very sensitive, and we're still dealing with a very nuanced situation here. So, as I said in the beginning, Don't anticipate gas prices going down, and think about how this global order could be restructured coming out of this whole Ukraine Russian crisis. And stay tuned. I'll have more stuff coming. All right. Subscribe, like, share. Peace.